So this is the Radicubs Finance. Um, okay, so first thing that we need to go over, these are like put in a specific order. So the first thing I would say that's really important is budgeting. So before you guys start doing anything at the beginning of like the season, you want to make sure that you've budgeted everything out. So I included an image of like the 2018-2019 budget and then the 2019-2020 budget, so that way you would know how much we spent approximately for certain things. So registration's kind of a fixed cost. Our first year it was 6,000 because we were rookie, but like after that it's 5,000. So you just have to make sure that you know how much certain things cost. And so for first year it was kind of not really super specific because we did it like last minute. But for the 2019-2020 budget, we were kind of specific about it. We divided our expenses up into two different categories, which is just needed and wanted. So for needed expenses, these are things that had to be included no matter what, like registration costs, that we needed that $3,000 because we did get a grant for 2,000, but we needed that $3,000. There was no way we were going to be able to do anything without it. Versus other things like we divided subsystem costs up into, we definitely needed 2,000 and an extra 1,000 was nice. So it's just a good way to gauge how much money we really need and then how much money we want. So overall, the budget said that we needed $21,600, but what we really needed was $10,900, and the extra wanted expenses would cost $10,700. So that's that. And so you guys need to, I've created the finance spreadsheet for the past season, 2019-2020, and it's pretty thorough. I'll go over these and then I'll show you what it looks like so you guys can have an understanding. But basically there's three different spreadsheets, I think. There's four different spreadsheets. So the first one is expenses versus assets. This is what I showed on the prior slide. Oops, sorry. This is what I showed on the prior slide, which is the budget. So it's budget versus how much money we've gained, whether that's from sponsorships, donations, money we raised, or money from last year. Those are all assets, money we've gained. It's the budget versus the money we've gained. So that way we can see that at some point we've hit our goal of, if the goal is 20,000, we can say we've hit our goal of 20,000 through assets. And the next thing that's important is a bank account versus everything, which is assets and liabilities. So bank account is just everything that's in the bank account, the initial cost, and then also you want to make sure that if people have gotten reimbursed, that money's taken out of the bank account and that the other spreadsheet matches up. Because sometimes what's in the bank account isn't, maybe you've given someone a check but they haven't cashed it in yet. You want to make sure that at the end everything matches up, because if it doesn't, then you've done it wrong and then there's money missing somewhere. And so the third sheet that you want is income versus expenses. So this is essentially how much money we've made versus like the amount of money we've spent. It's pretty simple. It's hard to describe when I'm just showing you words, but when I show you the actual spreadsheet, it'll be pretty simple to understand. And the final is expected versus actual. So expected is what we thought we would spend, like what we wrote in the budget. Say we wrote that registration was 5,000, but for some reason it went down this year. You would say the actual cost was a different number. So that way we know how accurate our budgeting is, and then we can be more accurate in the future. So like I said, all the numbers should add up. Bank account and everything should equal the same once everything is put into the bank account. So after everyone's cashed in their checks or all of our sponsorships have gone through, all of the numbers should add up to be equal to each other. And then income should equal assets. So that's the amount of money we've gained through sponsorships, fundraising, donations, and income is on the income versus expenses sheet. And then income minus expenses should equal the number that's in our bank account / the number that's in everything, because those numbers should be the same. So I can show you guys that this is what this looks like. So the first sheet is this is for the 2019-2020 updated budget, but this is everything versus what we need. So This is our expenses, which is what we thought our budget was going to be, and then the assets we've made. So this is every time we've gained money. We don't include liabilities, so anytime we've spent money, this is just what we've gained, so we can ensure that we know that we've reached our goal. So this year, we ended up making $20,877. So we were at a loss. We needed $722 more to reach our goal of $21,600, but otherwise we were pretty close. So we know how much we've gained was very close to what our budget said we needed. And the next thing we have is bank account versus total. See, right now I haven't balanced it, so these two numbers are different, but once you've balanced everything out, they should be the same number, because when people take out money, you should record it in the bank account and everything. Next is income versus expenses. This is just everything. It's all of the assets and all of the liabilities. So all of the money we've gained plus all of the money we spent. So right here, we paid $3,000 to Rich because he spent $3,000 on us to pay for registration. So we include that loss there. So overall, we know we made this much money. That was how much money we gained, and we spent this much money. So this season we spent $9,000, not including reimbursements that have occurred after that. And then the final is just expected versus actual. So it's our expenses based on our budget, and then how much we actually spent. So for registration, we predicted the cost would be $3,000, and the actual cost was $3,000. And so right here we marked how much we thought certain things were, because we had tools. We had a tool section. We said we would need to spend $2,000, and so right here, this is where we add it all up. And so it says that we spent at least $3,000 on tools, and then for workspace expenses as well as miscellaneous expenses, which includes a registration and insurance. So then going back to this, the next thing you need to be aware of is just sponsorships. So this isn't necessarily how to get sponsorships, but what you should do afterwards. So first you need to make a contract. In the finance binder, we have the Port of Perry Perry contract as well as the Smarts Club contract. So you can look at those as a model, but both of those can be really helpful. And you want to make sure that we record everything. So if there's a monthly payment / exchange of services, like with Port of Perry Perry, where they were dropping off food every Saturday, we want to make sure we include those dates in the contract or rough estimates, and include that those can be subject to change. That way, both parties know that there is an expectation of an exchange of services and when that exchange of services will occur. So for monetary sponsorships, we personally prefer checks, because it's just easy to scan them with the bank account app, with our banking app, and then just go in, versus if we have sponsors go through PayPal, we might lose money because they take a certain percentage as a fee. It really depends on what the sponsor is willing to do, but if they ask how you want the money, it's better to ask for a check, because that way we don't lose any money, and some of their money isn't being wasted. And then make sure, this is most likely just to the main business person who's receiving the check, but on receiving the check, make sure to scan it into the bank account immediately and include that money in the finance spreadsheet, so that way we know we're keeping track of all of our money and we aren't losing anything anywhere. Okay, so the next thing is purchase requisition forms and expense reimbursement forms. So these are both important for people spending money. So perfs must be filled out prior to the purchase. And this might seem like useless for whatever reason, but it's so that if for some reason someone wants to buy something and we don't have the money for it, if they fill out a perf, we can let them know, hey, we don't have the money for this. Maybe can you find a cheaper option, something like that? Because we don't want it to be a scenario where they don't fill out the perf, they go and buy something, and then it turns out to be way more expensive than our budget can afford, and then we can't pay them back. So we want to make sure that if you are any member buying something, you want to fill out a perf before, give it to the business member and ask them to check if we have the amount of money to pay for this. It's pretty self-explanatory besides that. And in the handbook that we're making, I go into thorough detail as to why you need certain aspects of it. And then for the expense reimbursement forms, they must be signed after purchase if member wants reimbursement, and you must have the receipt, so that way we can know for sure that the amount of money that you are asking for in reimbursement is the amount of money you spent. We just want to be careful. We don't want to underpay you or over reimburse you for whatever reason. And if the you must have a stapled packet of the perf, the IRF, and the receipt. And if you don't, the business member will not be allowed to write the check. And then we'll also just need a printed copy to put into the finance binder, so that way we can keep track of everything, not only in our finance spreadsheets, but just also on the binder. So last thing, this is mostly for Ronit, I think, if he's still main business member, but it's just how to write a check, because there's a specific way to do it, and if you don't do it correctly, it could just not go through. So you want to make sure you have the date. You can write it out like this. You can also write it out in just regular form. Like if you were doing March 13, 2018, you could do 03/13/2018. That's fine. You want to make sure you have the person's name. Make sure it's you want to make sure it's the name that appears on their bank account. So we call Cassidy's dad Rich, but in his bank account, his name is Richard Wisniewski. So you just want to make sure that you're writing out the full name. And then the amount that they are being reimbursed for, you want to know how to spell that out. So you always do 100, and if there's any cents, you always do blank over 100. So if, say it's like $153.32, you would write 153 and 32 over 100. And then this part right here is just for, like, you can keep track of what the check was written for, because there's always like the underlying paper that it copies onto. So say this person spent money on registration, so you can write for registration here to just keep track of why you were paying someone back, and then the person who's writing the check will sign it. But in this case, because the business member, in this case Ronith, isn't an adult and isn't a board member of Radicubs Robotics Corporation, you're going to have to get one of the board members to sign it. So once we figure out who that is for the next year, then they can help sign checks for reimbursement. But that's pretty much it. I don't know if you guys have any questions. Most of it's pretty self-explanatory. So yeah, that's it.
Well, are there any questions? Does anyone ask any?
None from me.